Hi. Okay, we're back. So now we're going to work on our audience area. I do want to go ahead and create a separate design layer for the theater house. So we're just going to do theater house. And I'll stack it right next to the theater floor plan. So I'll just put it kind of in the same part of the drawing. And some of the reason for that is that I want to have it as like a separate layer. It's easier to turn it on and off that way, and I know I'm working in the correct spot. And then I'm also going to create a new class for that, and we'll call it audience risers. So audience dash risers. I did that up here this time, and then I can switch into that class. So I can go back up here, audience risers. So as I'm drawing these pieces, they'll all be classed that way as well. So theater house, audience risers, that's where I want to be as I get started on this part of the game. So we're going to use our section view to gather information about the height of each of these steps. We know we are 2 feet 6 down below the stage height. And in order to facilitate that, I am going to take my theater house layer, design layer, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new bottom level for it. So just so that I can measure the same the whole way up, I'm going to create this line here. I'm going to just turn it a different color so that it's really easy to spot it. So I'm going to make it a red line. That is going to be my horizontal plane for my theater audience, and we'll measure all of the heights from that place, okay? We're going to go ahead and start by creating this level at the correct depth, right? And it'll match up then underneath this stage, and we'll have it extend even though technically there's this sort of void underneath the house. We'll go ahead and extend it all the way to the back wall so that we have a nice clean lower level in our space. So I'm going to go ahead over here and create that. One of the things I'm going to do is edit my layer and set an elevation for this layer of minus 2 feet 6 inches. And what that will do, right, is it will bring that whole layer 0 down. It did not like me doing that. Minus. Maybe it didn't like the space. Yeah. Brings that whole layer down that 2 feet so that anything I'm building, I can start at the 0 of this layer, which is now 2 feet below all of the other layers, in order to more easily create those measurements that I need. Because the first thing I'm going to do is really just creating a bottom for the whole thing, I'm going to just make a big rectangle on this layer and extrude it down 6 inches, minus 6 inches. So now when I come into the side view, right, I'm looking at a section view, I now have this whole rectangle that sits underneath the stage level. It'll also sit underneath our whole riser level when we're done. And that should make it relatively neat and clean as we build the rest of this seating situation. So when we look at, I'm going to just zoom in a little bit. We do have a little bit of potential confusion, right? If you look at this level here, this will be the bottom of this pit. There are double lines. We're going to just choose one of those lines, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to create this level here. This whole shape, and I'll go ahead and draw it real quickly, will all be at the stage height. So there's no height difference here. I think it's just like carpeted, not carpeted as it crosses this proscenium line. So I'm going to grab my Polyline tool, start here. I'm going to choose the inside line, and I think I'll start with that part because it's a little bit trickier to parse. So we're going to go this way. Click, click. Right, switching back and forth, click, and then switching back to my arc mode, and then inside line, and then switching back to my straight line mode, switching back to my arc mode. Boop. Boop. Switching back to straight line mode. Okay, great. And now I will just continue, and I'm just going to go all the way to the back of the house and create this whole plane to fill in that area. Boop. Did it work? Okay, it did. Great. So now I've chosen lines that I like there. I can extrude this whole thing 2'6", right? Because again, I've set my whole plane down below. So now, in theory, it is the same height, right, as it crosses over that line to the stage, but it is in a separate part of the drawing. So that's exactly what I wanted. Now I'm going to come in and create these smaller arcs, right? The curved risers, and they will each be, so the 2'6" is this height, it's right here. Each of those steps below, the big steps are 10 inches, right? 10 inches, 10 inches. We're gonna, let's see. Yep, so, and then as we get above, they're a foot. So the back rows are a foot each. So it'll be 10 inches, 10 inches, 10 inches again. Let's just make sure we're all happy. Yep, 10 inches, 10 inches, 10 inches. And then from the height of the stage up, the first step is 10 inches. The next two steps are a foot each. And we'll actually be measuring all of those measurements, again, from this red line that we created. But this will help us to see what the extrusion is for each of those, right? So if I pull it down to the red line, that's how high each of those steps will be extruded above the ground. Boop. And nope, not that one. I need this one. Okay, so I have all of those marks over there. I also have little steps that are sitting in between, and those will be half as tall, right, as the step that's behind them. But we're going to start with our big steps, and then we'll set our little steps in on top of them. Let's grab our Polyline tool and play our game, right? And then switch to the straight line. You know what? It might be worth it because there's a double line situation here, and it's kind of confusing. One of those is our object line, okay? So we're going to use that line instead, right? Because that's the line we just created. We're going to use that straight line instead of this iffy, wiggly, slightly curved line that existed in the drawing. And in order to help keep clear what we're doing, I'm going to just delete these underlying components, right? So I switched to the X-plan, and let's see what happens if I delete some of these lines that are underneath here. I lost a little too much, but I think just for clarity and so that our pieces come together the way I want them to, I'm going to just delete these lines, and we will make a better guess in a moment. I'm also going to delete these lines because they are confusing. They would be railings potentially if we were doing this for realsies, but we are going to just delete them and skip them for the purposes of today's adventure. So I think that that's going to make it a little bit cleaner when we come back in and do our drafting. So I'm going to go back into Theater House, and now I can snap to specific positions, right? I can snap from that point into this corner and know that I'm kind of hitting the right spot. Let's try again. So here, and then I'm skipping that spot and I'm going for this intersection right here. Boop. Then I'm switching to my curve, sliding over here, finding that intersection, not the end though, not the arc end. I want the intersection right there. And then I can come to the arc end. Oh no, I'm making a curved line. There we go. Still, and I keep hitting delete to go back just one step so I don't have to start over. And now let's see if I can get that. Beautiful. Okay, so that I feel pretty good about. Let's go ahead and extrude that the correct amount. So 10 inches is the correct extrusion on that. Extrude 10 inches. Great. Next step, we'll go. So in order to clean up some of these edges, I'm going to just try and delete these existing, like the things that are wrong on the Garry Marshall plan, so that I'm not messing myself up, right? I would rather use the correct lines that I'm creating right now than accidentally tap on or snap to some Garry Marshall lines that I don't love. So if I go in and delete those extra lines, now I can actually just trace what's going on my actual drawing. And that's going to be a little bit happier for me. Let's try again. Third time's the charm. Polyline Tool. Endpoint. Arc. And endpoint. And then switch. Endpoint. Oh no. Oh, I didn't switch enough. Great. And then arc. Midpoint. Endpoint. And then straight. Much better. Now when I extrude this, and I actually want to extrude it more than 10 inches, I want to extrude it 20 inches, which is 1 foot 8. I'll go confirm that that's correct. Yeah, 20 inches, 1 foot 8. Let's see if that's correct now. So, oh no, I got it right. If it looks like a solid, and it does look like a solid, it also is on the wrong layer entirely. So, I'm on the X plan. I'm not in my audience risers, and that's why the whole thing is now sitting up above the whole drawing. So let's move myself back to where I was supposed to be drawing all along, which was the theater house, and then it should now be sitting down into that pit the way it's supposed to. Oh, good. Good job, buddy. I'm going to just turn off my theater walls for a second so that it's a little easier for me to see what I'm doing on this side of the house. So if I just turn off the theater walls, now it's a little easier for me to check my work and see that I'm getting those steps in the correct places. Great. Okay. So now I have those two. I do want to make these little step units. These are curved. I feel like curved might be doing too much for us, so I'm going to just make some little rectangles for the steps, and then we can join them into the equation. So I chose this mode in the rectangle tool, and I'm going to just extend a little bit past the step behind it, and then when we add the solids together, it'll work fine. I'm going to extrude this half of the 10 inches, so it's going to be a 5-inch step, and then I'm going to make its bottom Z to be 5 inches, and then I'm still on the wrong freaking place. I gotta go back and be on my theater house layer, and I need to come over here and switch to my theater house layer so that I can stop drawing things in the wrong place. Good job, Lily. Okay, so now I have a little box, and it's sitting up on top of, it's sitting inside of, so the bottom Z was 10 inches, so it's sitting now on top of that step where it's supposed to be. Love that. We're going to duplicate our little box, and we're going to plop him down by this corner over here in the front row, and that bottom Z will be 0. I might even slide him to the end here, right? Wouldn't that be cute if I picked him up and slid him over to the end so that he matched up nicely? Great. And then we'll do one more of them, and we'll place it into the back corner here. So one more, pick it up by its downstage, onstage corner, plop it in over there. And now that whole side is good. We're going to do the same thing and mirror now that we've created all 3 boxes. Oh wait, hold on. He needs a bottom Z of 20 inches so that he sits on top of that step. So now that we have all 3, in theory, if we have done our work correctly, we should be able to mirror them across the center line to the other side, and they should be pretty solid. Yep, we can work with that. Okay, cool. So now let's look at our back half of the house, and this gets, again, a little bit trickier. We know the height of this right here, right? We have been given that measurement. There are a couple of steps that get us there. So I think this middle step is going to be the same height as the rest of this section of the riser. In order to create the right shape, I'm going to do that same thing I did before where I deleted an extra line. So let's go back onto our Garry measure plan and just delete the double line from the railing because it's going to confuse us when we go into draft. And then we'll go back to the theater house. Okay, this is how I would do it if I were making a model out of foam core, right? I would start with the lowest level, make that whole solid place, and then step up on top of it, which is kind of what I started with already. So let's come in here and we're going to start with the back half of it, and I'm just going to trace that outside edge. And I'm going all the way one step up from the bottom. Now I'm at the curve on the front and back to straight to get into that corner. Okay, so this whole step we know is, I believe, 10 inches up, right? Because it's one step above the 2'6" mark. So that's going to be 4 foot. No, it's going to be 3'4". So let's go ahead and extrude this level to 3'4". 3'4" inches. Okay. So then above that, we'll have a step here that's halfway in between. Let's go ahead and start our next line, our next polyline. And we'll start it kind of as a straight line over here. We'll end up putting that step in on top of it. Back to where I started. I'm going to extrude this now. 3'4" was the first one. So I think the next one is 4'4". Let's check. Make sure I'm not lying to you. It is. And then the last one is 5'4". Okay. So the last one, again, this will be a step that sits in between. So we'll start the last one here in the back, and it will be 5'4". Okay, extrude this to 5'4". Great. So then let's come back in now and add our steps that are in between. So we have a rectangle here, right? And that is going to be an extrusion of 5 inches. And its bottom Z will be 2'6". This will be at the correct level. This one, I think, is going to be 6 inches, and its bottom Z can be 3'4". 6 inches. Bottom Z, 3'4" inches. I'm going to just spin around and see if that looks correct. Yeah, that looks right. Okay. Uh-oh, this top is now in the wrong place. So I think we need to fix this top edge, right? Because it actually needs to come back underneath. It needs to be cut out here. So I'm going to just take a chunk like that. I'm going to extrude it a foot. I'm going to make its bottom C 3'4" inches. Did I do that right? Let's see if I did it right. Yeah. And now I can subtract solids. Okay. And then, let's see if that's correct now. Nice. So now I've chunked that little piece out. so that there's a place in that riser for that step. We need to do the same thing on the opposite side. Yeah, and I'll mirror the other steps across once I've filled them all in. Okay, so now one last step. We'll go here. That will be extruded 6 inches because that's half of a foot, and its bottom Z will be 4'4". Let's double check these all look correct. Nice, that looks great. Okay, cool. So now I will select my in-between steps. So this one and that one and the bottom one, and I will mirror them across to the other side. We will hold shift to make sure that we're actually hitting a straight mirror line. And it's close, it's not quite, which is probably a problem with the drawing, or else the room is not symmetrical, which is also possible. So I'm just going to move these guys over and snap them into where they should be. I want to move here. Wow, it doesn't like me. I'm going to move it kind of out of the way and then snap it back in, which is sometimes what makes things happier. Is picking them up, moving them out of the way, and then snapping them back where they go. Great. Okay, so now all of those pieces, in theory, are the audience risers, right? And it looks pretty correct. I love it. Okay, I'm going to now add all of those solids together. I'm going to make that one big piece. So I'm going to go like this, collect all of this stuff together, pick up that bottom layer, and I want the whole floor. Yeah, this. So I'm going to just make all of this one solid. This will help me also later because then if I want to like make the whole room gray, I can make that all gray in one fell swoop. So I'm going to just model, add solids, and now that should all be one thing. So if I turn off the X-Plan, I have a nice theater drafting for us here. Look at that. That's so beautiful, right?